Religion is a result of fire. Okay? About 150,000 years ago, if you remember, which you should be able to because it's in your genes, it's in your mind, it's in your brain, you just have to think. The evidence is in the stone. We were evolving into man-like creatures probably, I'm not sure what the call is anymore, but probably a few million years ago. Anyhow, it didn't really make much difference if we were humans or if we were rats. We both basically did the same thing. We were obsessed with sex the last 600 million years, and it has created a lot of probably what you would call unrest in many species, especially the human species, because we've evolved the farthest in some things, of course, and other things we might be a little bit behind. But it's because we're going through, or we're busting through the wall, what the religious people like to call innocence, or is intelligent people would call ignorance. And the whole thing started, of course, when we took hold of fire 150,000 years ago, and we changed our culture. We went from being gatherers of berries and eating probably not that much raw flesh. We would have been eating raw flesh once in a while because we needed some flesh. Some people say we don't need flesh, and other people say it depends on your blood type, and there's all kinds of stories. But we probably ate meat most of our time, but we mainly ate meat as a supplement when we didn't have other things. But we're not going to talk about food so much. We're going to talk about sitting around the fire. And I think that was one of the biggest things that changed our culture, is because suddenly we had the ability to defend ourselves better from wild animals. And we also had the ability to perhaps to have a little more time for ourselves. We can go farther north as well and keep ourselves warm. But we spent more time, like the old Indian ritual we've heard about before we went over there and slaughtered them, that it was cool to sit around with a peace pipe and sit around the fire and tell stories. Okay? Now imagine you started telling a story to somebody 150,000 years ago, and there was no such thing as writing things down on paper. We hadn't invented much language yet. We were just starting to get into language. We were just starting to get excited about telling stories because we had time. We had this safety thing, this fire thing that other animals didn't like, and it kept us safe from them. It gave us a little extra time in the darkness to sit around before we went to sleep and tell lovely, lovely stories. And a lot of the stories, of course, were little horror stories about what happened when we went hunting and how what's-his-name got his leg bit off by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. No, those weren't there when we were there. No, a lion. And by the way, anybody who thinks that humans walked around with Tyrannosaurus Rexes, they did not. When the Tyrannosaurus Rexes were here, we were lizards. No, we were rats. We were something like rats. We were about as big as rats. Probably a little cuter than rats. If there's any rats listening to this and they're offended, well, I'm sorry. It's just a personal opinion. But anyhow, are we straying? Or did we have a goal? Our goal was to try to decide how it is we got started with stories around the fire and ended up with religion. Well, I think it's a simple process. Some of you people on the planet Earth will have remembered sitting around a fire. It doesn't happen too much in a lot of places because there's no wood left anymore, and we all live in cities, and if you sit around a barbecue, it's sort of like the same thing, but not quite. And the whole concept with a fire at night was you sat around and you told anything. Usually, if you tell them, if you're doing it you're on a motorbike trip, then everybody will talk about their motorcycle trip. But if you were doing this 150,000 years ago, you wouldn't have had any motorcycles. You would have had sticks and clubs and rocks and animals that you were chasing away or hunting down and berries to collect. And you didn't have a whole lot of other things in your life. All these technological advances that we've had in the last few hundred years are completely new, and they're probably confusing us so much that we don't even know how to think anymore. And that's probably why you don't understand what I'm talking about. So religion is like that black oily stuff, oil. It's like hundreds of thousands of years, well, not that even, I mean 150,000 years is not even long, so thousands and thousands of years we were probably telling some kind of stories sooner. But religion developed out of the stories. We kept telling stories, and of course if we never wrote them down, they would disappear and get changed and evolve and get mutated. And by the time we did have paper, we were already excellent storytellers. And back thousands of years ago, the storyteller had a very important role in the community. It doesn't anymore because we have TV and everything's just commercial. But it used to be that stories mattered. And it still matters to us because we've made them into religion. We've taken our horror stories, the ones that are most horrific. Take the Jewish horror story, for example. It's all about how men like to rape their children, and then they rent out their wives to other kings to get money so that they can raise their own family and have the protection of the king. And then, of course, there's the great incest story of Moses' father, grandfather, and the rebellion against that. But we're not going to talk about the story too much, so much as to know that our religions are usually what you would call the dregs, the most vile possible story that couldn't be told. And the Bible of the Jews is one of the best because it is the most horrendous. You can go in there and you don't need to read more than a few pages, and somebody's slicing somebody's throat, stabbing somebody in the back, fucking his kids. And of course, you would wonder, well, why do we make a religion out of such wretchedness? And I'll tell you why we do this. We do this because we want to scare the shit out of the other fuckers that are making religions that are trying to be just as scary. And right now, the Islam religion, which is a newer religion, of course, they haven't had as many years of horror and terror in keeping the slaves obedient, like the Jews. The Jewish slaves are most obedient. They won't even react if you throw them in a furnace. But we're getting completely off topic. But what I'm saying is religion is a result of sitting around the campfire and telling bullshit stories. And if you know that it's a bullshit story, it's fun to learn it. You go back and read, okay, our history sucks. Our history was gruesome. We are horrible killing creatures, but that's our history. So accept it, get on with it, and maybe we'll try something else soon. Because this whole concept of killing each other, it was kind of funny when we had sticks and clubs and knives and whatnot. But with atom bombs, it's not funny anymore. And one of the biggest problems with our lust to kill each other is that it is destroying the planet in its wake. And we don't really have the right to be doing that. I don't really think there's anybody that's going to stop us, but life itself will stop us. It'll just stamp us out. A virus will come along and we'll be gone. So we've got a lot of things to think about, and one of them is whether or not we want to survive. And if you've got a religion, remember, your religion is bullshit. It is a story told around the fire thousands and thousands of years before some bastard wrote it down and said, this is your law. And if we can't get by religion really soon and start seeing reality for what reality is, we're going to fuck up. We've got too many people all excited about the end of the world, the end of the world, the end of the world. Fuck off with the end of the world. Make it the end of religion. And then we'll go on from there, and you'll see it will be the beginning of the world. And that's exactly what Jesus came down to tell you. And he didn't want to tell you personally because he said, I would do a better job, because he was so pissed off at the Christians. And of course, you already know he's pissed off at the Jews. And we're not going to talk about the Islam right now because people are pissed off with Islam because they're going around being stupid right now. And that's enough. Okay? It's enough. I've talked about it enough, and you don't want to hear it. I don't want to tell about it. So just drop your religion and let's get on with the rest of the world.